it's rather amazing to think that your dad moved from, in probably the space of what, 30 years, went from Batsford House,
Yes.
Asthall Manor, Swinbrook House,
Yeah.
Mill Cottage.
Yes.
I mean, he did the full circle in, it was about 30 years, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all.
Yeah,
And he banged his head on that, on the little, on the wall between the sitting room and the kitchen.
yeah,
Every time he went down those steps, he used to say, "Oh, done it again."
yeah. And then, of course, he escaped it all and moved up to Inch Kenneth, didn't he, from here?
He did, yes,
Yeah.
which is an island off the west coast
Yes.
of Mull.
I've been there. I mean,
Have you,
yeah,
Archie?
it's an extraordinary tiny little island with this
Yeah.
one sort of castle-like house in the
Isn't
middle of
it?
it, and you just must be living sort of totally on your own.
Well, yes, but you could live on lobster,
Yeah,
if you wish,
yeah,
mussels, all those things.
yeah,
But the coal only comes once every 2 years.
yeah. By boat.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's shoveled onto the shore, and you have to look sharp to get it before the tide gets it.
Yeah, yeah. Very different to life in Swinbrook, I should
Very
imagine.
completely different.
Yeah.
But a very fascinating place.
Yeah, yeah. The things we talked about was how deeply sad you were with what you describe as an amputation when you had to leave Swinbrook. And could you describe why you were so sad?
Yeah, why I was so sad, because I loved all the people who lived and worked there for my father.
Yeah,
And I loved being with him, the shoot and the fishing and all those things, but none of my sisters liked any of that.
so they felt caged,
Yes.
and meanwhile you felt at
And I-
home. And you
I felt not only at home, but completely free. I was allowed to go hunting alone when I was 12.
Yes, yeah. And so that really, Swinbrook was the basis for your deep love and knowledge of the country, which has stayed with you for the whole of your life. And
That's perfectly true.
Yeah.
It certainly was. I know exactly where the primroses were, where the other wildflowers were. It's funny how at a certain age things are absolutely engraved on your memory, and those were the things I loved.
yes, yes. And of course, you know, your mother and father are buried up in the churchyard here.
And
your-
how many sisters? Nancy, Pam,
yeah.
Diana, Unity.
Yeah.
4.
And is 4 sisters, and is Tom buried here as well?
No,
No.
no, he was killed in Burma.
Killed in Burma.
No,
right.
there
Yeah.
was no returning of bodies in those days.
Yes. So there's a family plot in the churchyard, so it really is very, very much your...
And there's a very nice memorial to my brother,
Yeah,
put in by my parents in the pew they sat in.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, Swinbrook is very much part of your Mitford heritage, and of course you're the youngest of 6 Mitford sisters and 1 brother, Tom. But the other thing that comes out in the book so much is that your sisters didn't like Swinbrook so much, and in fact they called it Swinebrook, and just couldn't wait to get away.
That's perfectly true.
Yeah,
London was the great thing. But you see, you must remember it was 70 years ago,
yes,
and in those days, girls were not allowed to have flats of their own unless they were... Well, they didn't have flats of their own.
No.
They nearly all worked at home, no matter what their professions, but we weren't trained for anything, any of us.
yes.
So we were just hoping, the great hope, that somebody would like to marry us. And then perhaps, luckily enough, somebody did.
And of course you weren't going to find anyone in Swinbrook, so everyone had to go off to London and...
But they were longing for London and for all the things to do with London and the theatres and the
Yeah,
museums and all that. They were, but 2 of them were real intellectuals, Nancy and Diana.
mm.
And my sister Pam, of course, wasn't. She was more of a farmer. And my sister Jessica was a rebel. And it became a communist, it'd be so interesting to know if she and Esmond, who sadly was killed, her adored husband, would have been turned a little bit less violently red.
Yes.
They might have.
Yeah, might have, yeah. But such an extreme bunch that you all were. But you, beneath it all, loved Swinbrook so much and are always happy to return here.
Oh, I did, yes. And the hunting, what I adored was fox hunting, lived for it.
Yes.
Nothing else until I lost my nerve when I was about 19 completely, and then it's no good. Once you've done that, you'll stop.
Yeah. And of course your father loved hunting as well.
He did, but he broke his pelvis.
Yeah.
A young horse reared and fell on him in the stable yard at Asthall.
Yes.
And he was never really able to ride again because he couldn't get his leg over a horse.
One of the stories that people always talk about, and I never know whether it's true or not, is that the legendary story of your father hunting his children with bloodhounds.
Oh yes, that's absolutely true.
Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely true. But sadly I was too young to be hunted, so I never had that experience. But of course it wasn't like what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Because the bloodhounds were his pets, really.
Yes, yeah.
And they were delighted to see the children when they got there.
Yeah.
But people think it was wicked.
Yeah.
Wicked, they thought.
I think it's very funny.
Yeah.
So, and then of course Swinbrook fell out of your Mitford hands, because after the Mill Cottage, that got sold up eventually,
Yes.
and you went off to be married.
Yes.
And you no longer had a foothold in Swinbrook as a family.
No.
And then, by some twist of fate, years later, would you like to just tell us the story of how the pub and the Mill Cottage came back into your hands?
That was absolutely incredible. There was a very nice old lady, spinster lady, living in the Mill Cottage.
Mm.
And I always used to come and see her every time I came down here, because it was so full of memories. Besides, she was so charming and hospitable and all that, and became a great friend. And one day she said to me, I haven't got any near relations. You're the person who likes this place best. I'm going to leave it to you. Well, can you imagine? Of course I didn't believe it. And then when she died, and up came the will, and she had left it to me.
So she'd left you the Mill Cottage,
Yes.
and the pub, the Swan.
Not quite
No,
like that. The pub at a very advantageous price.
I see.
So it was, I did in fact pay for it, but peanuts compared to what it was worth.
Yes. And this was in, what year was this in?
I'm afraid when you're very old you forget years, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because there were several people looking after this pub after that.
Yeah. And then, and there again you got a foothold back into Swinbrook, and
Yes.
it's given you the opportunity to come back here and visit and see your old home, which you must love.
Which I do love beyond anything, and I love the wisteria outside and all the things that remind me of childhood, which are so many.
Yeah.
There was a fierce landlady called
Yes.
Mrs. Bunce,
Yes.
who was dressed in black from head to foot, except when she was feeding her turkeys before Christmas, and she got covered in meal. And she was frightening.
And she kept quite a strict, on Saturday night she kept the locals in order, I hear.
Certainly did.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
all of us, of course.
Yeah.
Get out of this pub, you're not meant to be in here, all that.
And of course one of the things you mentioned is the box hedge outside,
Yes.
which must be 200 years old or
That box
more.
tree, it's
Box
a real
tree, sorry.
tree, isn't it?
Yeah, the
Right
box
up
tree,
to the
yeah.
top. I don't know how old it is, but
Yeah.
it was just like that when I was a child.
Yeah, and the other thing is the ancient settle next door, which
Yes,
you remember so
the
clearly.
curved settle.
The curved settle, which is still
really,
here.
yes, and it really belongs in here.
Yeah,
Well, that's where it used to be.
yeah,
And it was so good when there were a lot of old pipe-smoking men
yes.
sitting around here. But of course I wasn't allowed in, because children weren't allowed.
No, they weren't.
No.
And of course, well, here we are today at the Swan, and it's so nice to have you here. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for asking me.
Not at all.
But if it wasn't for you, Archie, and Nick, it wouldn't be what it is today.
Well, it's been a great partnership, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay.